Right folks, Jack here from Peach Guitars, and today it's new brand day. I enjoy doing these kind of videos where we get a new brand into the shop, which we haven't had before, and I get to basically explore the full range and try and gather as much information about them as I can and condense it into one video. So this isn't a really in-depth thing, this is more of a kind of first impressions and an introduction to the brand. But we've just taken on the guys at Mezzabarba Amplification. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly in my best Italian attempt. These amps hail from Italy, which is the first that we've seen of an Italian amp brand, which is very cool. It's nice to get a slightly different take on what would traditionally be more of a kind of American boutique market. Typically, you tend to see some great high gain and boutique amp designs from Europe though, so to finally get some in from Italy is pretty cool. So as best as I can tell, with the four models that I've got in this video to show you, they've got kind of a theme that's quite strongly rooted in British amp design, but what they do is they like to refine those classic kind of Brit-style tones. There's plenty of gain on offer in some of these amplifiers, but they've also got some nice classic variants as well, like the couple of smaller amps over here to my right that we're going to explore. So it's quite a healthy range. They're not just an amp company that sticks to one sound, and certainly in the case of their flagship Trinity amp, which we'll talk about in a moment, they've really thrown every kind of possible combination of guitar tone in there for you to explore and for you to make your own. So generally speaking, what Mezzabarba try and do is just put in the very best components that they can to their amp designs. On their website, they very helpfully kind of list these items as just being no compromise whatsoever. They just wanted to build the best amp designs that they could, the amp designs that they, as players themselves, would want to use, and hopefully it would influence other players around to use that product as well. And I think just looking at their artist roster, they've certainly got a wide range of different players that play in different styles and that use these amps in a multitude of different capacities. So it's not just a high gain shredders style amp, it's equally not just capable of doing really nice clean tones, it can do everything in between. And actually, surprisingly enough, some of these amps have great vintage inspired mid-gain tones as well. Alright, so let's just have a bit of a breakdown of each amplifier. I've recorded a few sound clips on each, so you'll just kind of hear what I personally think are the 2 or 3 best sounds in each amp, though as I say, they're way more capable than this, and if you really want to spend the time and you can do a deep dive on the internet and get an idea of all the different tones that these amps are capable of, but these are just my takes. I'm also just going to try and keep things as simple as possible by playing a one pickup Knaggs Kenai J guitar today. I thought I'd rather just remove all the frills and just focus on what these amps can deliver with one single P90 pickup. And it does a good job. For all the clean tones to the mid-gain tones to the high-gain tones, this pickup in this guitar delivers very well at just showcasing the amp at what it does best. By the way, the delay and reverb effects you'll be hearing are coming courtesy of a Line 6 HX effects, which is in the effects loop of each of the amps you're going to hear. Alright, so I want to start with this mini stack over here, which is actually quite imposing. I say it's a mini stack. It's sat atop an oversized cruiser 2x12. This is their cruiser cab, which has got, as far as I understand it, 2 Celestion Vintage 30 speakers in it. But it is a huge cab, so it's got a huge, almost 4x12-like presence in the room. The 2 heads on top are both 100-watt models, and I want to start with the one that's on the top, which is perhaps the more simplified of the 2. So this is part of their M0 range, and this is the Overdrive version, which has the optional overdrive channel on top of the standard M0 sort of clean and crunch channel. So it's a 2-channel amp. The first channel, like I said, is billed as being on all things from kind of sparkly clean to classic gain tones, kind of mid-gain tones. So you can get a lot just out of this first channel with this drive control. You've got a bright switch and a boost switch here, which only work for that channel. So it's kind of a little bit like a Soldano Super Lead in that respect, in that you've got basically one channel that has different options to limit the gain and a bit of flexibility with the top end control as well. So this kind of encompasses, like I said, a lot of clean tones. It sounds great when you drive it up a little bit and get some mid-gain tones. And I'm also going to kind of punch in a Maxon OD-808 Overdrive pedal just for a little bit of a boost on these kind of mid-gain sounds. So you can hear how the amp takes pedals. It's got a different type of mid-range content to using the overdrive channel in the amp itself. It's got a little bit more high-mid this way. So I really like these tones, and you're going to hear that it can do nice sparkly clean with some delay and reverb, but it can also crunch up and give you a nice fat rock tone as well. So this M0 model being the overdrive variant, it's got a second channel, it's got a gain channel, and the overdrive channel in this amp is just pretty nuts. They describe it on their site as being the best all-tube overdrive ever, and I quite like their confidence in that tagline. It's certainly a big sounding overdrive. It's very, very smooth, it's very easy to play. It's certainly, I think, of all the high gain amps that we stock here, I think it's one of the very easiest under the fingers. So if you want that nicely compressed, but still feels like you're playing through a tube amp, it doesn't feel digital in any way, it still feels massive, but it's very easy to play. It's kind of the best balance of all things if you want that kind of tone. Though, there's a lot of flexibility with the tone. You can see on the far right end of the control panel, you've got depth, you've got feedback, and you've got presence, which all affect the power amp controls. So you can really affect the feel of this amp as well as just the tone. There's gobs of gain if you want to go for that. I'm not using it beyond about 4 on the overdrive control, and that's with a P90 equipped guitar. So you can just imagine how much gain there is here, but it's controllable, it's very manageable, and it's very sweet sounding as well. It's just a super, super fat, all-valve sounding amplifier. The other thing is worth noting is that this amplifier has custom voiced, custom designed, oversized transformers, which are designed by a company called Onori. These glorious red transformers in this M0 model really stand out, and being oversized, it just means that the response and the transient attack is enormous in this amplifier compared to a lot of other high gain amps that can sometimes feel small at lower volumes. Even when you're playing this amp at low volumes, you can still tell that you're taming a humongous beast, and when you do get the opportunity to really wind this up, those transformers just push out the 100 watts of power from these 4 EL34s, unlike many, many other boutique amps out there. Right, so that's one of the 100 watt amplifier models that, that Mezzabarba put out. The one that everyone seems to know for them, the flagship amp, is the one underneath it. This is the Trinity. Now this one kind of picks up where that amp leaves off, but adds in so much more flexibility. So if you're the kind of player that wants one amp to do it all, so if you want really nice American style cleans that can maybe just grit up a little bit with the facility of an onboard boost, if you want a channel 2 that will give you classic Marshall JCM type tones, this will do that. And equally, if you want to just plow on into a channel 3 that gives you the gobs of gain that the M0 amp had, but even more so, even more flexibility and tone shaping options, then the Trinity is exactly that. So as well as being 3 stock channels, you've got actually a total of about 24 different tones that you can muster from this amp with use of the onboard boost control, the bright control, various other controls on the amp that can just shape the tone, and it's all MIDI switchable as well, which means you actually get 48 different settings on this amplifier to choose from and 128 total presets. So once again, if you're a programmer and you like to just facilitate all your switching with MIDI switches and to have a bunch of different preset sounds at your disposal, all with one amp, you can do that with this very easily. Now, all of that massive range of gain that I talked about comes courtesy of 7 12AX7s in the preamp section, as well as 4 EL34s to give you 100 watts of power. And surprisingly enough, for all the glass that's in this amp and all the circuitry, this actually comes in considerably lighter than some of its rivals in the same class. This amp weighs only about 19 kilograms, so it's still not super lightweight, but compared to a lot of other 100 watt amps, this isn't going to break your back when you try and lift it to take it to a gig. Now, the other big feature that this amplifier has that I really value very, very highly in any high-powered amp is the option to switch between 2 master volumes as well. They're located on the back panel along with a few of the tone-shaping power amp controls as well, but you can very easily just bump up your volume for a solo if you need to do that with the MIDI switching and just jump to a second master volume. It's very useful, and it's something that a lot of amps miss out on when they go for these kind of all-encompassing multi-channel designs. Now, like I said, I wanted to try and avoid any complications by just picking a really simple P90 equipped guitar, but I want to show you just how capable this amp is. If you do want to go for some chuggy, high-gain stuff, it can handle that, as well as the really nice melodic, mid-rich kind of lead sounds I'm trying to go for more often than not in this video. As I say, I'm really only scratching the surface of this Trinity amp in particular, so there's plenty more information out there on our website, as well as Mezzabarba's own website, but just in terms of a plug-and-play amp, we're using the switches on the front to change the channels and put the boost in and out. It works really well, so if you are that kind of player and you don't want to be dealing with MIDI, rest assured that you can still get great tones out of this amp without having to read a manual, if that's more your style. Right, so flipping over to the other side, the smaller end of the spectrum, this is an amp that actually delivers no real compromise in terms of the tone, but it is way more portable. This head unit of this Skill 30 model is only 11 kilos in weight. And this is kind of a 30-watt distillation of the M0 amp, so it's still got the same M0 derived clean and crunch channel on channel 1, and you've got the same M0 Overdrive derived Overdrive channel, if that makes sense. So it's basically a smaller version of this amp. If you don't want to deal with 100 watts and those extra few kilograms of weight, this 30-watt amp is still very, very capable, and I think this is probably the sweet spot for a lot of people. The question with a 30-watt amp is, what is that level of compromise? And obviously it does sound not quite as big as this humongous 100-watt beast, but tonally it can still do pretty much everything that this amp can do. You've still got two channels with the same bright and boost controls for the normal channel. You've still got an effects loop, you've still got MIDI foot switching, so it's a very capable amp. It's just that bit smaller, and paired with this 1x12 cab, the Street Fighter cab that they call it, it's a really great small rig that still sounds enormous in the room and records really, really nicely too. Now the big feature about having a smaller amp like this is that you're probably going to want to use it at home, or at least to be able to tame it a little bit if you're playing smaller gigs. So this amp comes with a very nicely incorporated power scaling option over here on the right. And I wanted to show that this amp isn't just about getting all the tones from the preamp. I wanted to show you that with the normal channel, you can crank the hell out of the volume and actually utilize the 30 watts of power, those EL34s, get them working, and then tame the volume a bit with the power scaling option. So it's nice that you've kind of got this slight nod to an old school way of looking at amp design. You can legitimately crank the amp and then tame the volume by lowering the power. Second clip on this amp though, when I go to the overdrive channel, is the power all the way up, and I am going for more of that preamp gain heavy tone. Okay, last of the 4 amps I'm going to talk about today is certainly the most different here, and it's this little 1x12 combo on the end. We've got the combo version of the Z18 model. So this is a 20 watt, no master volume, no effects loop, 2 6v6 driven amplifier. Really simple, and of all the amps here, I was actually the most excited to plug into this and try it out. It's way more familiar to me than kind of navigating amps with MIDI switching and stuff like that. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably the case. So the good news is, if that is kind of your wheelhouse and you want a more simple all-valve amp, kind of single channel affair, Mezzabarba have an option for you. So the Z18, despite being a rather small and compact 1x12 cab, it's loaded with a Celestion G12 M20 greenback style speaker. Despite being quite small and compact and portable, it really fills the room. It's a really great sounding little combo amp, which isn't always the case. Sometimes small amps have a tendency to sound a little bit sterile and boxy. That doesn't apply to this little Z18 amplifier. And as you're going to hear, the couple of clips, whether it's clean or cranking this up and just using the guitar's volume to clean it up, it works great. It's really dynamic. It takes pedals very well. So again, if that's your thing and you want to use this as a pedal platform, or if you just want to plug in, crank it up and play that way, the options are plentiful and the tones are absolutely stellar. So this little Z18 is powered by 2 6v6s in the power section, gives you about 20 watts. Interestingly enough, this is a birch ply cabinet, so that's the construction of it. I think that works great to kind of enhance the resonance a little bit, like some of those old school combos that we know and love. Weighs in at about 14 kilos as well, so if you do want to grab and go, or just a little amp to keep in the corner of your studio at home, this is definitely going to fit that bill, not only tonally but also practically too. So there we go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this overview of Mezzabarba amplifiers. Very interesting amp company, and I'm really pleased that we've got them on board because there is just so much breadth to their kind of catalogue of amps. And this is just scratching the surface. There's plenty more models that they offer, and I'm sure many others that will be on the way to us soon. But hopefully you'll be able to tell that just by listening to these 4 amps, there's really nothing, there's no stone unturned here. If you're predominantly into rock-derived amplifiers and you want to push on into some high gain options, but still have the opportunity to go back and get some nice clean tones, then really any of these amps will do that for you. They've kind of covered pretty much everything, and it's often attributed to brands like this, or brands that kind of go into a more modern tonal direction with valve amps, that they can sound a little bit sterile on the cleans, and it's all about the preamp gain, and there's not really that dynamic and touch-sensitive nature anymore. I don't think that's the case here. Of all the high gain amps that I've had the opportunity to play, these are right up there with the very best of them. And if you really value those old school valve amp properties and you just want to afford yourself more tonal options without really sacrificing what makes valve technology so good, I think that these are one of the best options you can go for, especially with the inclusion of MIDI switching options and just having so many different tones at your disposal in something like the Trinity amp. You're really never going to be short on tones, and you're never going to be short on flexibility either when you need certain sounds at certain points on certain gigs. So there we are. If you want to find out more information about Mezzabarba amplifiers, then please do yourself a favour and click the link in the description below. Head to peachguitars.com so you can check out the rest of the range that we've got in stock right now, and keep your eye on the website to see what other stock we get in the future. So there we are, folks. If you want to find out even more information about Mezzabarba amplifiers, then click the link in the description below and head to our website peachguitars.com, and you'll be able to check out the full range of stock that we've got from them at the moment. And keep your eye on the website to check out the rest of the stock, which we'll hopefully be getting very soon. So if you've enjoyed this video today, please remember to leave a like down below, comment with your thoughts as well, let me know what you think of this cool new brand, and make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. So thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.